Okay, standard English, quick scan, and I see we've got a verb issue. It's going to be a verb tense. Are sweeping, were sweeping, so a couple progressive options, and we have sweep and sweeps. This tells me it's going to be one of these two answers, and no particular reason why it has to be, but it almost always is. It's a simple present tense or single or plural issue. So I'm going to look for the verb and I'm going to jump across the dependent clauses, which stretch from here to here, to find what the correct subject is for this verb. And actually, here's another dependent clause. So let's take a look at this. Midway through her 68 album, A Monastic Trio, Alice Coltrane switches instruments, swapping the piano for the harp. With the same fluid style that Coltrane was famous for on piano, okay, so a little different here, actually. I didn't notice the period there. We do have a dependent clause up front. With the same fluid style that Coltrane was famous for on piano. And by the way, up top, we are swapping, we switches, that's present tense. She sweeps, singular subject, sweeps in simple present tense with an S on the verb. She sweeps her fingers across the harp and creates, okay? So creates is in parallel with sweeps. It wouldn't be are sweeping. It definitely wouldn't be were sweeping, which is past perfect, past progressive. And sweep would suggest a plural subject. She is the subject. So interesting case here. Usually it's not the subject, then the verb. Usually we've got to jump way over dependent clauses to go from the verb to the subject. So that kind of threw me off. A simpler case took me probably longer to do in this case. Okay, standard English, verb issue, was, is, has been, were. So I've got singular, 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 and plural. My guess is it's going to be the plural. Let's take a look. Objects ranging from the Kikkoman soy sauce bottle to the Yamaha motorcycle to the Komakachi bullet train were designed. So from, we jump over to, we jump over these prepositions to the true subject noun, which is objects. Objects were. It is the plural answer. The singulars that are together are not correct. Again, no grammar reason why it couldn't be singular, but generally the one that stands out is more often than not correct, so I usually test that first. Okay, we've got a grammar issue. It's verbs, and I've got one non-finite, the infinitive to tell. Tells, told is telling. These are all finite conjugated verbs. I'm going to try the to tell first because that stands out. In the historical novel, Cuban-American author such and such uses poetry rather than prose to tell the true story. So she uses is the main conjugated verb, and to tell is in addition to that, to tell the story of Cuban folk. I wouldn't want a main conjugated verb. D is the answer, the non-finite. Okay, it's grammar, quick vertical scan. I see I have verbs. Had survived, survived, would survive. So a subjunctive mood or a hypothetical, and survives. So let's take a look. Like other amphibians, the wood frog is unable to generate its own heat, so we're present tense. So during periods of sub-freezing temperature, it survives by producing large amounts of glucose. So it's going to be present tense. It's singular it. I don't have to jump over any dependent clauses, and which again is unusual. And singular simple present tense gets conjugated with an S at the end of the verb. So it's not past perfect, not past, and not a subjunctive option. Okay, I've got grammar, vertical scan. I see it's verb issues. Places, placed, place, to place. These are all finite except for the non-finite infinitive option. I'm going to suggest that might be right. Let's try that first. No reason why it has to be right, but usually that is if it stands out. So while exploring Nevada's Gypsum Cave in 1930, Seneca, an Abenaki archaeologist, such and such made her most famous discovery. We're going to learn about that discovery. The skull of a now extinct ground sloth alongside human-made tools. Parker's crucial finding was the first to place, again, it's the infinitive. Parker's finding was, that's the main conjugated verb. So I don't need a main conjugated verb. This is going to be the infinitive, to place humans in North America. D is the correct answer. Okay, grammar, quick vertical scan. I've got a non-finite, future, and present. My guess is this might be a non-finite. Let's take a look. So the sun never sets during the Arctic summer in the far north. In response, reindeer in this region must change their sleep habits. Instead of resting when it gets dark, they rest when they need to digest, the infinitive, their food. It is a non-finite, to digest their food, not a main conjugation, right? They rest, that's the main verb. I don't need a main verb conjugation in this case. Okay, I've got a grammar issue. This is going to be a possessive issue, looking at the possessive pronouns and the apostrophes. So such and such won the Nobel Prize, that's Watson and Crick, in part for their 53 paper announcing the double helix structure of DNA. But it is misleading to say that Watson and Crick discovered the double helix. Their findings, so plural, the two of them, possess findings. So it's the findings of them. You could say it that way to assure its possession. So it's going to be the plural possessive their, T-H-E-I-R. The apostrophe, that's a contraction, they are. We do not want they are. That's not possessive. Okay? So their findings based on, and C is the correct answer. Okay, I have grammar, quick vertical scan. I see a series of verbs, creates, create, creating, created. Okay, my guess is this is a non-finite, created. It could be past tense, could be past perfect starting off, but we've got the S and the no S. My guess is it's going to be one of these. Usually it is. Usually we get that paired with some kind of progressive imperfect tense. Not exactly this here, but I don't know. Let's take a look. So in order to prevent non-native fish from moving freely between the Mediterranean and the Red Seas, biologists have proposed that a saline lock system be installed on the Suez Canal. The lock would increase the salinity of the lakes and create a natural barrier. So it does need to be a main conjugated verb, and it's the lock would increase the salinity of the lakes, and essentially the lock would create, or it creates, well, I don't want to say creates because that's with an S. A lock would increase the salinity and create a natural barrier. That would be the simpler way to read it. So why the lock is singular here, is it not the simple tense with the S? Because a dog walks with an S. We don't have dogs walk plural with no S, but we have no S on the verb. Well, the reason is because we have the would out front. It's hypothetical. So it would increase. And in parallel structure, we don't need to repeat the would over here. It's just would increase, and would, this would applies to the create, would create. Just to clarify that issue. Okay, we've got grammar, quick vertical scan of the verbs, promote, are promoting, promotes, have promoted. Okay, so we've got our typical progressive, perfect, and we have promote without an S and promotes with an S. We need to figure out whether it's in the simple present tense, our subject is singular or plural. So what's the subject to this, well, I do have a dependent clause here. So I'm going to jump over that. The African Gains Co-Production Market. That's my subject noun. The market promotes. So singular gets an S on the verb. The market promotes the growth of the African gaming industry. Notice I took this whole dependent clause. I didn't even read it. I just pulled it out of the sentence because it's a parenthetical and I can pull it out. So I can quickly see what's going on. So again, remember your subject noun is usually not next to the verb, although we've seen a couple examples here. Usually you have to jump over a preposition, a dependent clause, if not two of them. Okay, grammar issue, quick vertical scan. I have verbs. Allows, are allowing, have allowed, allow. Again, I've got this progressive and this perfect tense option. They're almost always wrong. No reason it has to be, but they're almost always wrong. Here I have an S and no S. It's simple present tense, and the question here is find my subject noun, jumping over potentially dependent clauses, and decide if it's singular, which means I'll have the S on the end in the simple present tense, or if it's plural and I'll have no S, kind of like a dog, singular, walks, and dogs, plural, walk. So let's look. Here's my verb, landing on one of the good spaces. So let's try to read this. In both games, players encounter good or bad spaces while traveling along a path. Semicolon. Landing on one of the good spaces allows. So on one of the good spaces is a preposition. So I have to jump over my preposition to my subject noun. And my subject noun is landing. Well, how is that a subject noun? It's a gerund. Landing is a thing. It's verbs with ing, can be either participles, main conjugations if they have a helping verb, or gerunds, which are essentially verbs acting as nouns. This is the subject noun. Landing is a thing. So landing allows. It's a singular thing. It allows. A.